Welcome to POTUS 2016, where we call the presidential horse race and pour cold, hard facts on the overheated campaign rhetoric. I'm Brian Lehrer. With less than a month to go, the Republican Party has a compound fracture. In the wake of the vulgar Trump video, not only have some GOP voters and elected officials jumped ship, but now House Speaker Paul Ryan is refusing to campaign for Trump. Instead, he says he'll work to keep Congress Republican. Ryan may have thrown in the Trump towel, but Hillary Clinton knows October comebacks happen. And even if she wins, she would like a big mandate and a Democratic Congress. So she's campaigning hard, especially aiming at voters 18 to 35, the millennials, who might still go for a third party or stay home. Here's Hillary Monday after debate number 2 at Ohio State University.
We may have the biggest presidential election that we've had in a really long time. And the main reason is because your generation, the young people of America, are the most tolerant, open, and generous generation in American history.
Clinton at the Ohio State University, right about the values, but maybe wishful thinking about the big turnout, without Bernie Sanders on the ballot. Fewer than half of millennials have told pollsters that they will bother to vote this November. Is it too late for Clinton to change their minds? And what's Donald Trump's appeal to other young voters? We'll dig into all this shortly. It's the start of our 4-part final month series on voting demographics, which in coming weeks will include the Black vote, the Latino vote, and the gender gap. But first, Trump comes up lame. Yes, time for the horse race. At our deadline, 3 scientific post-debate polls have been released so far. All had Hillary Clinton coming out on top in Sunday night's debate, though the numbers vary a bit. CNN's poll, released in conjunction with ORC directly after the debate, showed Hillary winning by 23 percentage points, 57% to 34%. Now that exaggerates the difference some because more Democrats than Republicans were believed to watch the debate. And it's a much slimmer advantage than her lopsided win over Trump after the first debate. But those numbers still indicate that she came out on top. A Politico Morning Consult poll of 2,000 registered voters released Monday showed Clinton taking the town hall with a narrower 14-point lead, and in the tightest of the first 3 post-debate polls, YouGov showed Hillary with just a 5-point margin. Beyond the early debate numbers, what do we know? Well, for the past 2 weeks, Donald Trump had been sliding in the polls already and was about 4 points behind Hillary nationally heading into this past apparently disastrous weekend for the candidate that featured him gleefully boasting on tape about predatory, if not criminal, behavior towards women that he says was just locker room talk. The backlash was swift. In just 48 hours, 50 Republican officials withdrew their support. As of October 9th, Gallup reports that 34% of Republicans view their own party's candidate unfavorably, which is the most negative Republicans have felt toward Trump since June. It's a sentiment that American newspapers also seem to share. As of Tuesday, not one daily American newspaper has come out in support of Trump. Hillary was not always the beneficiary, however. Several papers stated their support for anyone but Trump. Interestingly, Trump's aggressive performance in Sunday's debate did beat expectations, but ironically, this only may have served to divide the GOP more, as some Republicans on the edge of defecting decided not to jump. The public took note. According to Morning Consult's post-debate polling, 8 out of 10 Republicans now see their party as a divided party, up about 20 points just since the GOP convention. According to the Huffington Post, with much of the post-debate polling yet to come in, Clinton is beating Trump by a wider margin than Obama was beating Romney in 2012. Also, Hillary appears to be getting more support from independents. September polling from Quinnipiac University showed she trailed Trump by 7 percentage points among unaffiliated voters then. But since her successful first presidential debate, and after Libertarian candidate Gary Johnson's disastrous performance on the campaign trail, what's Aleppo? Clinton was leading Trump 46 to 32% heading into Trump's fateful weekend. Hillary Clinton would gain even more ground if she could win over more voters 18 to 35 years of age who might stay home or vote for a third-party candidate. But what issues would bring millennials to the polls? Is Clinton addressing them? And what's Donald Trump's attraction to other millennials? Joining us via Skype from San Francisco, political consultant Ben Tulchin, who worked with the Bernie Sanders campaign. And here in our studio, Ryan Girdusky, staff writer for the conservative RedAlertPolitics.com, and Gwenda Blair, author of Donald Trump, the Candidate. Welcome to all of you. Gwenda, is this videotape consistent with the Donald Trump you know?
Dominating guy. He's the alpha dog, and he once again wanted to, when he was talking to Billy Bush of all people, be an alpha dog. And that kind of language, did he use that language around me? Absolutely not. But that need to show that he's dominating, in charge, top of the food chain, yeah.
Ryan, is the Republican Party completely falling apart now or fracturing into two?
I don't see how it's falling apart at all. I just read an article today about how Republicans in Indiana, in Wisconsin, in New Hampshire, and Pennsylvania are surging in the polls. They might recapture state house races in Connecticut and in Delaware, blue states, and how governorships in Vermont and New Hampshire are likely to go Republican this year. So I definitely think that there is a problem with Trump's rhetoric and amongst Trump's personality that people have with him. But amongst his issues, as far as putting America first, putting workers first, putting families first, no, it is heads and toes above, Hillary Clinton's policies of corporatism, war, and open borders.
Ben, do you see the media having overreached in reaction to this video and a strong comeback for Trump after the second debate?
Absolutely not. I mean, look, Donald Trump did this to himself. It's images, it's his own words. And that's what's so powerful about this. It's a video of himself talking in his own words. And I think that's why this video had such a strong impact. But I think in terms of, ability to come back, look, voters are starting to vote right now around the country with early voting. In California, where I live, millions of ballots are about to get mailed out today. So this is way too late. In terms of the impact it has on the Republican Party, it's tremendous. I mean, look at the fallout from today. It's an ongoing civil war. I mean, Speaker Ryan basically has said every man for themselves. Right now it's not Trump versus Hillary, it's Trump versus the Republican Party. So you basically have an open civil war going on in the Republican Party 4 weeks before the election when voters are starting to vote. I mean, this is incredibly damaging to the Republican Party. Very, very good news for Democrats, quite frankly. And I think the challenge that Hillary Clinton and the Democrats are going to have is stepping out of the way of a circular firing squad that's happening right now on the Republican side of the aisle.
We have a couple of Donald Trump tweets from Wednesday morning to put up, which show the degree of the fracture with the rest of the Republican Party. Let's take a look at these. It is so nice that the shackles have been taken off me, and I can now fight for America the way I want to. I think those shackles refer to the ways he was trying to, quote, behave for the Republican establishment. And then the other one is, disloyal R's, Republicans, are far more difficult than crooked Hillary. They come at you from all sides. They don't know how to win. I will teach them. Ryan, what do you make of this?
I think that he has had a lot of problems with the corporate class of the Republican Party, the same way that Bernie Sanders had a problem with the corporate class of the Democratic Party. The only difference was that the Republicans didn't, by hook or by crook, make sure that another candidate won, the same way the Democrats did with Hillary. I think that the corporate class, the Chamber of Commerce Republicans, the military-industrial complex Republicans, they are petrified of a Trump presidency, because the Trump presidency ends their dominance in Washington and changes politics as we know it.
Gwenda, a year ago when this program was new, you told us that it wasn't simply that Trump's reality TV fame would help him, but that reality TV had changed the culture.
Yeah. Wasn't I prescient?
Yes. And so how were you prescient? What do you see that you would describe that is that coming true?
Throughout the campaign, the primaries, and then the actual campaign now, the whole idea that the facts sort of kind of don't maybe matter, that there's no room for fact checking, that the moderators, they shouldn't be checking facts, that you could just put it out there. And I think Trump's MO has been to be the big steamroller who says it, moves on. Twitter has been such a blessing for him, that nothing can be checked because he's gone on ahead with a new tweet. And I think that kind of the way that the reality, in quotes, has displaced real, not in quotes, that's what's happened.
Because the tweets go out there and they get shared by the nature of social media,
They get shared
regardless of
immediately.
what, and there are a lot of fact checkers out there.
But
that
they're
are
always
very
catching up
active.
behind they're way behind. They're trying to catch up. I think the media in the last several months has gotten way faster at that real-time reaction, but it's never quite real-time. And anyway, there's another tweet after that. And his genius, if we want to call it that, is the unpredictability. He gets you watching because you don't know what he's going to say next, what the next tweet will say.
With all these statements and other things that Trump has come out with that have offended so many different people, I've heard some speculation now that, assuming he loses, and especially if he loses big, the Trump brand is damaged. So he can't even go back to the private sector and be what he was before because he's tainted. As somebody who's written in the past about the Trump brand, what do you think about that prospect?
I think that's a real possibility, that this, to some degree, now we do recall that this is the sixth times that he's talked about running for president. By far, obviously, the other ones he didn't take forward. But those were all sort of kind of brand extensions as much as anything else. And I think this 2016, to some degree, was still partly a brand extension. And he himself has said along the way, well, even if I don't win, my brand will be all the stronger. So that's definitely been in the mix. But this went way farther. And now, whether the top end, the high rollers, the very luxury consumers that he needs at Mar-a-Lago and in the very high-end hotels, are they going to want to stay at places with that Trump brand? Does that mean super luxury anymore, or does it mean braggart, blowhard, and loser?
And kind of the nationalist right in the United States. Ben Tolchin, how much of a factor do you think Gary Johnson is? Because Bernie Sanders voters, to the extent that they're Democratic Socialists, would be the opposite of libertarian. The Libertarian Party platform, never mind free public college, it calls for no public education, that the market can take care of education. And you can go down the list of the ways in which Gary Johnson's party is the total opposite of Bernie Sanders. Are there millennials who don't get that in any number?
Yeah, I think Gary Johnson represents a protest vote at the moment. If millennials are not happy with Trump or Hillary, they're open to Gary Johnson without knowing much about him. But I think as they find out more about Johnson, what he represents and what the party stands for, the Libertarian Party stands for, in terms of values and issues, there's no doubt that Hillary is by far the best fit. So I think that's why she's got a lot of upside, in my view, with them. She just has to make the case.
Ben Tolchin, I know you got to go. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Ryan Girdusky and Gwenda Blair are still with us. Now, some millennials and other voters see Clinton as untrustworthy, saying one thing, meaning another as it's perceived. Let's watch one of the interactions from the debate on Sunday.
This question involves WikiLeaks' release of purported excerpts of Secretary Clinton's paid speeches, which she has refused to release, and one line in particular in which you, Secretary Clinton, purportedly say you need both a public and private position on certain issues. So, two from Virginia asks, is it okay for politicians to be two-faced? Is it acceptable for a politician to have a private stance on issues? Secretary Clinton, well, your 2 minutes.
Right. As I recall, that was something I said about Abraham Lincoln after having seen the wonderful Steven Spielberg movie called Lincoln. It was a master class watching President Lincoln get the Congress to approve the 13th Amendment. It was principled and it was strategic. And I was making the point that it is hard sometimes to get the Congress to do what you want to do.
The 13th Amendment, of course, was the Emancipation Amendment ending slavery. Here is some of Trump's response to that.
Well, I think I should
Mr.
respond
Trump.
because it's so ridiculous. Look, now she's blaming, she got caught in a total lie. Her papers went out to all her friends at the banks, Goldman Sachs and everybody else. and she said things, WikiLeaks, that just came out, and she lied. Now she's blaming the lie on the late, great Abraham Lincoln. That's one that I haven't. Okay, Honest Abe. Honest Abe never lied. That's the good thing. That's the big difference between Abraham Lincoln and you. That's a big, big difference. We're talking about some difference.
Brian, hardly anybody is talking about this exchange and the WikiLeaks dump in general, even though there's a lot in there. It seems to have gotten drowned out by the Trump video. Is that your perception?
In mainstream media, yes. On social media, absolutely not. The Trump video, on the day it was released, got 500,000 clicks on Facebook. WikiLeaks got 2 million every day for 3 straight days in a row. Now, this is absolutely being talked about on Reddit, on Twitter, on social media, on Facebook. The problem with Hillary is that she's terrible at this, at social media. And it was proven. There was a study done a couple months ago that said Bernie Sanders, Donald Trump, and Hillary Clinton, she got the least amount of views, the least amount of clicks, the least amount of retweets, the least amount of clicks per article on Facebook, least amount of likes. She trails Trump by 3 million followers on Twitter today. And that's why she's incapable of actually fighting this front for millennial voters. And the thing is that Hillary, as much as she's capable of having the entire mainstream media being her cheering audience, she's incapable of sitting there and stopping the alternative media and from releasing stuff like this. Just today, one other point was that there was the Goldman Sachs article today at the debate. She saw that she never stood for universal health care. WikiLeaks, there it was. I want universal health care. She is caught.
You mean single payer or
Yes.
universal health care? She's
The
always been for universal.
Canadian-style universal health care is what she said in her Goldman Sachs interview, which she lied about at the debate. So she has a serious problem where she's being confronted with lies on alternative media, which is where millennials are. No one watches TV. I don't watch TV almost ever.
But millennials are not supporting Donald Trump, hardly at all, because he seems to stand for so much that they reject.
Well, a portion are, but if you look at the Gallup poll, the least amount of millennials want to vote in this election than ever before. Only 46% actually even care to vote in this election. And the deeper and darker it goes, and the more revealed that Hillary Clinton's past, the more you'll see millennials who have said this to me, I'm just not voting. I don't care, doesn't matter to me, I'm not engaging.
Gwenda, there's the reputation that Clinton has for lawyering, which is slightly different than the reputation that Trump has developed for lying. How would you compare the two?
Trump lawyers up pretty good himself. There's a lot of non-disclosure, what is it, NDAs? Is that what they're called? Non-disclosure agreements. Are smacked on everything for anybody who works on him, all the people who were on The Apprentice. What is that, $5 million that they're going to get slapped with if they reveal anything?
If they talk about anything that happened while they were there, that might be why we don't see people from The Apprentice.
Why we don't see them? Why we
releasing videotapes of behind-the-scenes things that may be as vulgar as what we saw in the other video that have been rumored to be there.
Yeah, and people that work for him and ex-wives. I mean, and he's certainly one of the keys to his success at getting remarkable tax abatements and all, various and sundry forms of subsidies across the years in his various enterprises, especially real estate, has been he hires good lawyers. Zoning and tax law in real estate is a kind of niche thing, but you can make a lot of, that's where the money is. And he hired the best of those in New York from the beginning.
Gwenda, Blair, thank you very much. Ryan's going to stay on as we bring on some additional evidence. Time for evidence-based politics, where we pour cold, hard facts on the overheated campaign rhetoric. One of the biggest emerging voting blocs in this election is a complex knot. Millennial generation voters, a key demographic for Obama's victories, are just not feeling it as much this year. A recent Gallup poll found only 47% of adults under 34 said they would definitely vote this year. That has dropped precipitously from reverse digits, 74% in 2008. So what's going on? Is it just the Bernie effect, We'll try to understand more about millennial voters now, and here to provide some historical and cultural context about millennials is New School professor Natalia Mehlman Petrzela. She is author of Classroom Wars, Language, Sex, and the Making of Modern Political Culture. She also co-hosts the History podcast, Past Present. Welcome.
Thank you.
It was 2008 just an aberration that so many millennials turned out because they were so excited about Obama?
It was certainly an aberration. If you look at a longer history of young people voting, I mean, in 1972, the voting age dropped to 18 from 21. So you could think that's the high point of youth excitement. And that year, in the next presidential election, I should say, in 76, only 55% of young people came out to vote. So it really was an aberration. I think that Obama really represented something new and exciting to young people. A young president, an African-American president, his whole thing was hope. I mean, that was pretty compelling to young voters.
And to some women, they are driven crazy by the idea that the first woman president, as long, really 8 years longer, in the making, is not driving the same historical excitement.
I think so, and I think that has to do, if we're talking about millennial voters, if you think of a generation of women and young men who don't remember the anti-feminism of the 1980s and who grew up in those, flush years of the 1990s with so many women getting voted into office, Hillary Clinton being in the White House as First Lady, I think, and as well, I guess even now, the definition of progressive values around gender is more about trans issues, and so the idea of a white, cisgendered, older woman who's been in the establishment running for president, I don't think that for young voters it necessarily has that historic bang, but I do think these Trump tapes are turning that around a little bit and people are realizing how alive and well anti-feminism is.
Because it's energizing a gender-based consciousness that will result in a bigger vote.
I hope so. Well, I think it's certainly energizing not just a gender-based consciousness, which has become kind of natural in some ways for millennials. They think about pronouns and things like that the way we never did. But I think specifically about women, from the Alicia Machado situation to these Trump tapes and this, I won't even dignify it with locker room banter, but this admission of sexual assault and the way people have jumped to Trump's defense. I think it's a good moment for younger voters, women especially, I hope, to realize, wow, Hillary Clinton being where she is a big deal for women, and we should show up for that.
What's happening with young conservatives? Are they divided between Trump and never Trump young Americans in the same way that older Republicans are?
There are certainly a base of the Republican Party amongst old generations who don't want to vote for Trump. Some based upon his political stances, especially with war and trade and immigration, and others focus on his personality. And there's that segment in the population amongst all Republicans, from old to young. But I will say with younger millennials, I think that the fact that Obama came into the White House basically with close to no record whatsoever. Even though he had been in the State House, he voted absentee most of the time, not most of the time, but several times, and he spent a very short time in the U.S. Senate. I think that with Hillary, the record is there. So it's very hard for millennials to sit there and get excited about a candidate that they could go on YouTube and sit there and her bashing gay marriage. And then they could sit there and say, oh no, but I'm for it. They could have her sitting there and fighting for the Iraq war and then saying, but no, I'm against it.
I agree. Hillary Clinton's big problem with millennials is how much she represents a kind of establishment sensibility, whether that's accurate or not, but we saw that's what Sanders tapped into so much, right? In the same way Trump does in some ways with very different policy implications, rejecting this idea of business as usual. And yeah, Hillary Clinton, yes, she's a woman making these strides, but she has been very much someone who works within the system, and sometimes problematically so. And so I do agree with you that that's a major hurdle for her to surmount.
But my question to you is about young conservatives,
right?
And whether they are also riven. People who are not interested in Hillary Clinton from the get-go, are they also divided now in the same way that we're seeing Congress, for example, Republicans in Congress, Trump and never Trump?
Okay, they're divided on the fact that there is no alternative to Trump. Because Gary Johnson has said in the past that he supports taxing carbon emissions, and then he recused it, but he said it out loud several times. He has said things, his VP has said that he supports gun control. So And he is very much trying to get over Bernie Sanders supporters, and he's doing it pretty successfully. He's ignored a lot of young Republicans in the process, so a lot of young Republicans feel like, okay, if I don't like Trump, Gary Johnson's VP is for gun control. Who am I going to vote for? I mean, Evic McMullen's in, I think, 2 states. I think he's campaigning amongst 3
That's
people.
another third-party candidate who almost nobody knows.
Yeah, exactly. But I think that they're saying there, some won't vote, some will vote for Gary Johnson, some will vote for Trump. But I feel like a lot of it is on it's on the identity of what does it mean to be a Republican, and is his policies the problem or is his personality the problem? And for a lot of people, I think it's the personality.
Because the millennial generation seems so liberal statistically compared to people who were 18 to 34 in the past, that a Republican majority in Congress and the prospect of getting the White House again is really diminished for long term?
Well, okay, so here's the thing about millennials is that they're like a lot of Americans in the sense that they're not ideological as what they seem. So millennials are anti-war in general, but for invading and bombing ISIS. Millennials are for expanding Social Security at the same time they're for that was a big term. I know where to go for that. But they have a lot of contradictory views on multiple issues. I think that what's more interesting about millennials is even though there are more millennials now than ever before capable of voting, fewer are. And we saw this in the primary. In the 2016 primary, even though Bernie Sanders got a bigger chunk of the millennial vote than Obama did, it was very few people. I mean, relative to the 2008 turnout. That means older millennials, even with the new ones coming in, older millennials said, I'm going to pass on this because I know that what they're promising is not going to happen.
Maybe another indication, though, that 2008 was the historical aberration and this is more normal in an otherwise extremely abnormal year. Well, the only poll that matters is less than a month away, so we will see how this all turns out. Thank you both very much for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
And that's POTUS 2016 for today. We're here each week at this hour, calling the presidential horse race and pouring cold, hard facts on the overheated campaign rhetoric. Next time, black voters. Has Hillary earned their trust? And is there voter suppression that would hold down the black vote? Less than 4 weeks to go. I'm Brian Lehrer. Thanks for watching. By the way, several states have voter registration deadlines coming right up. Don't forget to register to vote if you haven't yet and you're in one of those states where you still can. Talk to you next week.